play like Arteezy. That's all you got to do.
Play like Arteezy,
Yep.
and one day you too can get third place in every tournament.
Hello, friends. Welcome back. Donnie's here. I'm here. We're doing another conjoined episode video. I don't know where I'm going with this, but we're
Conjoined
looking.
twins? Is that what we are? Do we share the same brain, the same balls, or the same heart?
I feel like at this point it's a soul thing. It's like we're like two parts, two halves to the same soul. You know.
Yeah, I agree.
We're looking at an Arteezy replay. I was actually in this game, and that's the reason that I wanted to watch this, was because I was playing, and I noticed that, in particular, Arteezy's lane wasn't doing too well. He was communicating that the lane wasn't so great. He needed to farm. He was playing Sven in this particular game, and, of course, he ended up having a phenomenal game. And he did some really cool stuff in the game that I wanted to take a look at the replay. I haven't seen it yet, so I want to take a look at the replay and see like what he did basically to come back in this game, because it was not going well at the start. But obviously with the score of 15-2, it was a solid game. So
yeah, 851 GPM with a bad start. That's pretty good. Pretty good.
Yep. So we'll go ahead and get right into it. Hello friends, here I am making an addendum to this video. I'm an absolute idiot, and I accidentally not only had Donnie's camera covering the map, but Dota Plus came up halfway through the recording and covered up his camera. So I'm sorry about that, but I do like the stuff that Donnie and I talked about in this video, so we decided to post it anyway. I just wanted to let you know that I really fucked up, and I'm sorry. Anyway, back to the video.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about what it's like to have Vengeful Spirit as your laning partner, and it's kind of like just being alone in the lane for the most part. So not too surprised that he had kind of a rough laning stage based on the lane.
So this is a bit of an interesting part where the lane is pushing out and it kind of splits into these two groups. And he chooses, okay, he moves his camera up there and sees that over here, this creep, there's going to be an equilibrium forming here. And instead of bringing the creeps to that equilibrium, he runs back and brings it to in front of his tower and just kind of kites it for a little while, so that the next equilibrium is, maybe not going to be directly in front of his tower, but it's going to be closer to it. And I think if you're probably playing a more aggressive hero and not a hero that just wants to hit creeps and farm, you would probably allow that equilibrium to form in front of their tower and maybe take a little bit more damage. But for him, he's just like, okay, he's happy that he can get these two last hits for free. And then the next equilibrium is, like I said, it's a little bit far forward compared to like where he brought it back to, but it's still, in quite a decent spot.
Right. And actually, one thing that was really cool that he did right there was like one of the creeps started to aggro in to the tower range, and then he immediately pulled it out so that he was able to keep this creep wave like right here. Because if this creep dies,
right
the tower
there, right there,
early, right here, it's going to happen again.
The Venge went to pull it. The Venge accidentally pulled it, and then he says, no, that we're okay. Yeah, it happens twice.
Right
actually.
there. Yeah.
And that actually results in the wave being just in front of where he pulled it to. So
right, because if that creep had just gone into the tower and died, then this wave would be like way farther up. So it's actually really important that he did that.
Right, and this is especially true on like a carry position when you're playing a hero like Sven, where it's like if you're just farming, it's a problem for the enemy team. You don't need to be the one that's like applying any insane amount of pressure.
He even blocks this wave back a little bit. He's just like he's doing whatever he can to keep the wave in the safest spot possible, knowing that he just doesn't really have a lot of support in this lane.
Yep. Okay, this is a pretty interesting moment for me, just because I think I personally have this. Sometimes I'll die to go for range creeps and things like that. So it is just like a bit of affirmation to know that a player who has like 4 accounts in the top 10 will basically understand if there's 2 heroes going for a range creep deny, that it's not worth taking the harass. Like I feel like people really hype up. You need to get range creep last hits. You need to get range creep denies. But sometimes it's just not realistic, and we always talk about being realistic with your resources. And you can see that he moves his camera up here. He identifies that this range creep is about to die, and he chooses not to go for it. He moves the camera back and just says, it's gone. Like I can't do anything about that. That's Venge's job if it's anybody's job. I think a excellent support player, if this was crit on Venge or something, that range creep, that's getting howled, right? The Venge is going to get
100%.
that.
100%. Yeah, and I think he could have gotten it right. He could have sticked and then ran up and stunned, but then he would have 0 mana and he would have put himself in a position where he could easily get harassed or potentially killed.
Right. It would cost a lot more resources than it would give back, essentially.
Yeah, it's all about risk and reward in the laning stage, whether it's worth it to go for stuff like that.
The classic vengeful spirit sitting in the trees until she's low resources, then running in and dying. The classic.
Yeah, one thing I do really like that I think is Arteezy's better at than just about anybody else is that when he does have a lane like this, where he feels like he can be pressured by the other team, he does a really good job of trying to keep his entire creep wave, or at least part of his creep wave, in between him and the other heroes, just by maneuvering his hero like to one side of the lane.
They move to the left, he moves to the right. They move to the right, he moves to the left. Yeah, he's been doing that a lot. It's subtle, but it's definitely really important.
Because then if they do try to harass you, then they have to tank creeps, and like if you just play on the same side of the lane as them, then they can easily harass you without taking any damage.
They just move a little far to the left where they're out of the creep aggro range, and then they keep hitting you.
Yep.
So yeah, that's very, very important. So one thing I did want to point out here is just with this Rubik kill, I feel like even in my bracket, I mean, I know I'm in this game, but this is like a high rated game, for me. A lot of people, even in my bracket, will go for this kill and they'll commit for it and maybe get speared into tower. But as soon as he gets speared away, he just says, okay, Venge, you're getting that kill. And then he just goes back to the creep wave. Because once again, just being realistic, not having boots, just having like gloves of haste, he knows that he's not going to be able to run over there and get in range of this Rubik kill. If anybody's going to get the kill, it's Venge. And if the kill doesn't happen, this person's likely going to have to walk back to base anyway. So it's just equivalent to a kill. So instead of committing for the kill, which I think most people would do because most people are psychopaths in this game, he just says, okay, I'm going to go farm the creeps. I'm going back and farming. Okay, let's see what he does. I'm interested to see if he farms this or if he pulls this. He pulls it. Nice. So important. So important. Yep. This is something we see in replay review every single week. Low-rated carry players will farm that instead of pulling it. And it is so much better to pull it because it means that not only are you going to get that farm and experience, but the creep equilibrium is going to be directly in front of your tower. If you farm that thing, you're farming the only thing that can guaranteed safely bring your lane equilibrium back to your tower.
Yeah, so the timing of this Rubik kill, if you can pause for just a sec, is really important. So like you said, they both go on this Rubik, and the intention is to get a kill, but it's not really to get a kill, it's to get Rubik out of the lane when the bounty runes spawn. And the bounty runes are about to spawn, so they're going to make a play to make the Rubik have to either go back to base or just be dead and then be out of the area when the bounty runes are about to spawn. And so like you said, they go on the Rubik. Arteezy doesn't actually care whether they get this kill, I don't think. He just wants the Rubik out of the lane so they can get the bounty runes.
Yeah, really good point. Really solid point. Okay, this was the most interesting thing to me, was that he didn't just go jungle. He was actually active. I recall this not going too well because the Lion was there already too, and it was very close, and the Lycan was also there, but I still really like this.
Yeah, I think the idea behind this play is amazing, and it's going to work in like every bracket other than this one probably. Like if you do this as a carry, you kind of get forced out of lane, but you have a power spike with your ultimate, whether you're a Void, a Juggernaut, a Sven, any of these heroes, you hit level 6, you have kill potential with one other hero. Make a move somewhere, get a kill, and then take over either that area of the map or then just return to the jungle. Like you might as well use your kill potential and cooldown, especially if you're just going to go back to farming anyway.
Right. And I think it's important to note too that the enemy mid is Zeus. So that's a very punishable hero, and if you don't run at the hero and try to kill him in the laning stage, it is not punishing one of the worst elements of Zeus, if not the worst element of Zeus. I really feel like that's Zeus's like biggest weakness is the fact that he's so easily killable in the laning stage. So Arteezy, even being a carry, is like, I'm gonna punish this. I'm not gonna let this basically shitty hero go unpunished.
Right. It's
In
very
terms of his
similar to playing
weakness.
against like Sniper or Tinker or Shadow Fiend, like any of these heroes that is extremely not mobile and very strong in the mid game, but very bad in the early game. Right. I think that's one of the most important things. It's like, yes, he's quote unquote AFK farming, but he's not actually AFK farming because he has a very good awareness of what's going on. Because while he's hitting creeps, he's also checking everything that's happening elsewhere on the map.
Constantly. He's doing this constantly. That's
Yeah.
probably the biggest thing that I'm noticing between, well, I'm not going to name names, some, certain carry players and Arteezy.
Okay, so this is something really, really important. He sees Lion, he pings Lion, but he doesn't chase Lion. I think that 99% of carry players like pop their war cry and just run at the Lion and try and stun him. Arteezy's saying, "Hey, we could kill this Lion if you guys catch him, but I'm not going to commit myself to the catch because he's more concerned with hitting his item timing, he's hitting this BKB timing." And he'll happily assist on a free kill, but he's not going to go out of his way even a tiny bit or use any of his resources to go for a support kill that really doesn't mean anything unless it's already set up perfectly by his teammates.
Yep, and I do think if he was playing another hero that wasn't Sven, this would probably be different. Like if he's an Ember Spirit, he'd probably be playing way more active. But
Yeah.
Sven is within this archetype of hero that if he is on the enemy team, the pressure is on you to stop him from farming because he's going to get to that power spike of having Daedalus and BKB and Aghanim Scepter, and you're not going to be able to deal with him. So that's all that he's focusing on is hitting that power spike as absolutely early as possible. And in order to do that, he needs to basically only take these fights that are perfect for him.
Like this fight, he would not come to this fight if he didn't have BKB.
Yes,
100%.
certainly. But he immediately looks to fight with his BKB timing. So you can see that this is what in his head, this is what he's articulated is this is the timing that I'm going to fight at as the moment I get this BKB.
Yep.
Because he went from ignoring every fight, watching the fights and ignoring them to showing up the moment it looked like a fight was going to happen. And it's interesting because it almost gives the enemy team this false sense of security if you aren't showing up to 10 fights in a row and then all of a sudden you're there and then they're like, well, what the hell? There's a Sven on the enemy team, but with the BKB, they can't react to him. They can't deal with him at all. So yeah, that's I think the biggest thing for me in this is how much he looks around the map and doesn't react to it. And then when he gets the item timing, it's a complete 180. And that to me screams carry player.
Yes,
I think
I completely agree.
I think this is one of the big reasons why support players a lot of the time think they can play carry, but then there are two things that can happen if you're a supporter who tries to play carry, or like an offlaner who tries to play carry and you're not actually good at it. Number one, you can show up to every fight, and that's terrible. Or you farm, and then you don't know what the item timing is to show up on, so you just farm until you lose. It's a lot of the time one or the other. So one of the most important things with carry is choosing what that item timing is and essentially pulling that 180 within the game.
Yep. I really do think that carry is at a point right now where it is like the one moment at which you hit like a power peak where you're stronger than the other team. It doesn't necessarily have to be like your absolute power peak, but it is in relation to the other team. And we can see that here with the crit, with the BKB, with the Mask of Madness. He has everything he needs. He's going to take way less damage. He's going to be unkiteable. He's going to do way too much damage for anybody to fight him. And so because his singular focus has been hitting this timing, you can look at the last hits. Like he's astronomically higher than anybody else in the game. And as a result, when he does show up with that timing, there's just nothing you can do to him.
And one thing that I did find interesting about this game in terms of being in this position and having the enemy team locked in their base is that Arteezy was saying on mic that we need to get the enemy team out of cutting position. Like they were hiding in trees and cutting waves, and he seemed to really highly prioritize not holding our position, but to back off and essentially vacuum the map, as you know what I mean? Like you're gonna mow a lawn where you
Right.
kind of cover the whole area and you do it in a pattern where you get every little piece of grass that you can. That's essentially what was happening on the map, is that we just went to our side and kind of went upward and just scouted to push the enemy team back. And I think the Lycan was like hiding in some trees, but you can see that Puck is here pushing this lane out. So we essentially just like so what happened in the last couple minutes is we all backed, but then we slowly made our way across the map together towards the enemy base again. And now what happened is now the enemy team isn't in position to cut, other than Lycan, who's sitting in trees like a piece of shit. But there's two waves in now, and a bunch of the enemy team is now stuck in their base. That's
Right.
essentially what that achieved. And I found that pretty interesting, because I've always had this question of, I know top teams like to hold positions, and I also know top teams like to run around and gank and push people out of areas, and I wasn't sure what to essentially do in this situation. And then he said it. He's like, okay, guys, like push these guys out. Like, we need to get them into their base. And then we're kind of
Right.
doing it again here to some degree. You see Pango's like backing and looking for the Lycan, and he finds him, which I think the Lycan then has to TP out because he found him. And now we can go high ground. Finally, once we've got the Lycan back, now we go high ground.
Right. And this is where a lot of people mess up, and it's hard, especially in a pub environment, because you have to be really patient. Like you could feel strong enough to go just end the game, but the only way that you potentially lose the game is if the Lycan is hitting your base right now while you're fighting his team in his, right? Because then you could end up in a situation where the Lycan like kills an entire Rax while you're killing his team, and somebody has to go back, and then everybody buys back and they fight you in their base, but there's like half your team missing because they're fighting the Lycan or trying to stop the Lycan from taking your base. So it is really important that you do this like corralling of the enemy team back to their base, just back to their base over and over and over until you feel like all of the waves are at a point where they're not going to threaten your base, and all the enemy heroes are not at a point where they're going to threaten your base, and then you can go high ground. But most of the time what happens is pubs is you're somewhere near the enemy base and you're stronger, and your team's just like, go, and they just all dive. And that can be
You say that
the
as
moment
you say that
happen.
as we dive their fountain and dive the fountain. Pretty much what I expected from a good carry. I would say it's not the most glamorous thing, but it works. That's playing a good carry these days.
Yeah, and I think that one piece of advice that I'd have to give people is, obviously in this game, I doubt anybody on your team was flaming him, right? But
Of course, no.
in many games, or if you didn't know that this was Arteezy, there's a pretty good chance that people are like, why isn't our Sven joining us? Why isn't our Sven joining us? And if you're the carry, you can't let that affect you. Like, know your timing, hit your timing, and then win the game. And if you have a carry on your team and they aren't joining the fights, just ask them what their timing is. Don't be like, why aren't you joining the fights? Just like, when are you going to be ready to fight? What items do you need? And then you can just kind of play accordingly, right?
Totally agree. Totally agree. I find that in replay review and coaching, that's one of the biggest things, I think, when it comes to carries and losing MMRs. People will say, okay, I show up to fights because my team is going to flame me if I don't. And all I can say is watch this replay and ask yourself, does Arteezy give a shit if his team is flaming him? Of course not. He knows better. And if he knows better and it's the same thing you're thinking, well, then you know better too. So just play like Arteezy. That's all you got to do.
Play like Arteezy, and one day you too can get third place in every tournament.
Thanks for watching. Check out patreon.com/Dota Alchemy. We have a very special stream coming soon for patrons where you get to choose what Donnie and I are playing in pubs. And if you want us to have a miserable, awful time, well, that's up to you. If you want us to have a great time, that's also up to you. But it's all up to the patrons. So check that out if you're interested. Thank you so much for watching, and we hope to see you in the next video.